The following presentation was recorded live in Los Angeles, California for the 24th Annual Convention of the International Association of Square Dance Callers. This is Tape 5, Solving Our Problems. What are our choices?
Okay. This session is being taped, so if you have... Do we have a cordless mic? Do we have one in here? We're supposed to have one, and I don't see one. We'll make this microphone available. If you have any comments or questions, please state your name, use the microphone, state your name, and then use your question on the microphone. That way, for those people that aren't here when they have the tape, they'll have benefit of hearing both the question and the answer. There's nothing more frustrating than 5 minutes of silence followed by an answer that you don't know the question for. So we'll get this microphone... We'll sit down so that everybody can just come up here and use it, since we don't have a cordless mic. Maybe we could get one. Laurel, would you go see if you could get us one? Okay. The name of this section is Solving Our Problems. What are the choices? Now, what we want to do here... Get my notes? Sure, you can move wherever you want to. Okay, now, we want to make this discussion, and we want to include you in the discussion as much as possible. We want to make this discussion as positive as possible. We don't need anybody in here bashing nobody else. My program is better than yours, or my ideas are better than yours. The whole concept here is that we take the ideas that we get and try to look at them positively. So we'll try to be, Jerry and I will both try to be as impartial as we can. Naturally, we have our own views. As you have your own views, we'll have the end of the program for Jerry and I to give our personal views. In the meantime, you are encouraged to give yours. I'll give you a brief synopsis, and I'm going to let Jerry has got a presentation to read. Keep in mind, guys, that we need to be as open-minded about all of this as we possibly can. If we come into this whole thing closed-minded, not willing to accept any changes, no one's going to get anywhere. No one is saying, contrary to popular opinion poll, no one is saying right now that come Wednesday morning, we're going to take the mainstream program and throw it away and do any major radical changes Wednesday morning. There's nothing saying anybody's doing anything. What we need is some good, positive ideas so that we can present that based on the findings from this meeting and from Jerry's committee, present that to the board, to present to the membership, to let's see if we need to do anything, and if we need to do something, what we need to do. With that in mind, I'd like to read read part of this. This is primarily Jim Mayo's writings, some of mine, but it's primarily Jim Mayo's. But it said everything so well, I didn't see any sense in adjusting most of it. The world is considering some major changes. Nearly everybody recognizes that there is a problem. Growth is slowed and groups are shrinking. Callers in particular are trying to understand the problems and to do something about them. Many different approaches have been proposed. Some of these conflict with others. The common bond is all weakened by lack of agreement on what is best. The first step in solving any problem is to first identify the problem. The next step is to see if there's any points on which we have any agreement on. It may also be good to consolidate the proposed solutions and describe them in terms that we can agree on, even if we can't agree on what's best. There seems to be near total agreement on at least one point. The current square dance activity, at least in the United States. Now, we need to be aware that while we have a lot of problems, there are areas of the country and areas of the world that are using the current CALLERLAB programs the way they were designed, and they're getting along fine. We are not. The problem in the United States is that we don't adequately train new dancers to join comfortably into the groups that are available for them. Now, this is true whether the available groups are dancing mainstream or plus or some combination of the two. Now, some will protest that class graduates can get by in areas where mainstream dancing is available. It helps to ask whether these graduates of a 60-hour class are prepared to dance comfortably to a different caller at a dance for experienced dancers. In response, most will agree that the graduates are likely to have trouble. Many will then note that very few of these graduates are really getting the 60 hours of training on the 67 mainstream calls. we agree on this important part of the problem definition, we run into a problem on agreeing on the solution. There are primarily 2 or 3, depending on how you look at it, different approaches. The first one is to modify the existing dance programs so that new dancers will not be tempted or encouraged to move on to learn additional calls until they've had time to dance comfortably at the available dances. The jump to the next program of dancing would then be made larger than what it is now, maybe by eliminating the plus calls. Some of the plus calls are maybe plus entirely. A second proposal is to encourage the establishment of many more dances with programs that are comfortable for new graduates. These dances would probably have to be caller run. That's because most of the experienced dancers are satisfied with where they're at, and they're not eager to promote easier dancing. Now, the second proposal is that the existing CALLERLAB programs, excuse me a second, I jumped too far. To be sure, got this thing speeding back. To be sure that we understand what the choices are, let's be more specific in identifying the alternatives. The first calls for establishing a brand new dance program. The most common suggestion for the content of this program is that it include most of the current mainstream calls and a few of the popular plus calls. There's general agreement that such a new program could be teachable in 20 weeks. This plan would also eliminate the plus program as we know it to assure that new dancers are not encouraged to move on quickly after graduation. The second proposal is that the existing CALLERLAB dance programs be maintained with perhaps some minor modifications. Callers would be urged to offer easier dances. This would allow dancers of most classes to dance comfortably. Continuing programs that do not serve as training grounds for future full mainstream or plus groups. Many callers, recognizing the inadequacy of the current classes, believe that the best program for these dances is the current CALLERLAB basic program. The two approaches are quite different, and they don't seem compatible. In order to be most effective in addressing these problems, we need to agree on a single approach and pursue it together. It's not doing us any good if I'm doing one thing in South Carolina, somebody's doing something different in California, and somebody in Kansas City is doing something different. This is really true if the alternatives conflict with each other. So here's what we have to look at. We have to either change the programs to discourage new dancers from moving on to more complicated dancing. We leave the programs essentially unchanged and encourage establishment of many more dances that are comfortable for new dancers. Now, we hope out of this discussion to come to some type of agreement on one or some combination of that terms. With that in mind, I'm going to let Jerry talk, and then I'll get back up, and then we're going to ask for your ideas and your input. We don't need a lot of, without hurting someone's feelings, we don't need a lot of, in my area, I do this. One of the big problems that we have is that we callers have a very serious I problem. And we find that most of our conversations start off with the fact of I do this. We need to get away from the idea of looking at the trees and let's start looking at the forest. And what's good for your particular area may not be good for square dancing. If it's good for square dancing, it's going to be good for all of the areas. If it's good for just your area, it may not be good for square dancing. With that, here's Jerry's story.
Jerry, let me make sure this microphone is working. Coming through okay there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Walt. As we all know, square dancing is and has for some time now been on a steady decline nationwide. There are many dedicated and committed callers and leaders who have been actively searching for the solutions to correct these problems. There are many factors related to the decline in square dancing, and it's sometimes hard to pinpoint exactly what these factors are. After much discussion and many debates on this issue, it seems that the needle points to one specific area, and that area I speak of is the new dancers. We have a very unique and entertaining activity. The leaders in this activity, however, must begin going about things in a different fashion. Most callers seem to be oblivious to the real problems, and if they're not, then they choose to ignore it. Complacency seems to be our worst enemy. We must start entertaining and accommodating new dancers once again. To encourage callers to start basic clubs would probably work if we all did this. We would all have to have basic clubs to accommodate the new dancers. This will pacify those of us who fear change. Overseas callers and dancers would be happy with this, since it appears that the system is working fine for them. The institution of CALLERLAB, however, would not have to admit that their level system or the abuse of was a big part of our demise. To follow the first solution, let's take a look at what we'd have to have. Most callers today have a plus club already, and they're probably trying to teach beginners for that club. If not, they have a mainstream club, and chances are they're trying to put beginners into that. What we would be asking seems to be a little out of focus to me. Number one, you'd have to have a basic class and a basic club to accommodate those dancers. You'd have to have a mainstream class and a mainstream club to accommodate those dancers. You'd have to have a plus class and a plus club to accommodate those dancers. That's 6 nights a week. I don't think we have that much time. You must realize by now there's a lot of hope in this theory. Not all callers are going to start beginner clubs. In reality, very few will. And we just mentioned why. We don't have that much time. Mainstream clubs can't survive today. We have this euphemistic level called soft plus. Seems to be where everybody, or the majority of the people are. I know there's mainstream clubs around the country. The way these programs would appear, if callers accommodated all levels. Now remember, I have not mentioned anything so far about APD, DBD, extended application, or any other type of program that teaches dancers to really understand the level they're at before going on to the next. When extended application is applied to this scenario, it really puts the picture out of focus. You must understand that by our own recommendations, extended application should be taught to some degree after learning each level before moving on to the next. So with that in mind, now let's take a look at the way these programs are going to look. If we would go with the solution of everybody start beginner classes, that's going to fix the problem. You'd have to have a basic class, you'd have to have a basic club, and you'd have to have a basic extended applications workshop. You'd have to have a mainstream club, a mainstream class, and a mainstream extended applications workshop. You'd have to have a plus class, a plus club. And that would be as far as you go unless they wanted to go to A1, and then you'd have to have a plus extended applications workshop. So there's 3 levels within every level. Through plus would take 9 sessions a week. Are you starting to get the picture? There's just not enough days or nights in the week for a caller to achieve this. And from all the statistics that have been gathered and sent to me, and I've read a lot of them this year, what I hear is there's very few callers in this world that could really administer extended application choreography if they wanted to. Dancers should be concerned with teaching classes and operating square dance clubs, not promoting higher level dancing with no experience in extended application, APD or DBD, whatever we want to call it. However, that's not the way it is today. Most callers are trying to teach plain vanilla plus and advanced, which creates programs that are just difficult enough to keep the new dancers away. Callers are not even using all the calls on any of the programs. Different lists are being used all over the United States. Basically, callers cannot or take the time to teach all the calls. So we end up once again with this euphemistical level called soft plus. For the new dancers to get on the dance floor with us, they must learn over 100 calls. There's not many basic and mainstream clubs left. It seems the new dancers must remain in class forever, or we turn out an uneducated dancer when trying to teach over 100 calls in 20 to 30 weeks. Most dancers get frustrated and quit. And that's why we're having a hard time now getting people to come into our classes, because the ones we've ran off have told everybody what a crummy activity they got into, that we forced them and kept them in a teaching mode far too long before we entertained them. Let's talk about the other solution. We haven't even got to that yet. Changing the programs. What does that entail? If the program's changed, CALLERLAB is afraid it'll lose members. I'm afraid we'd lose members. It's the last thing we want to do. We want to pull together. CALLERLAB is also afraid the callers will just continue to call whatever they want. They're already doing that now. They're afraid afraid that callers may have to get better, we may have to get better at our own art of calling. With fewer calls at our disposal, we're seeing the loss of callers and dancers overseas who think they have no problems. In reality, they are experiencing the same problems we are. I've been there, I've seen it with my own eyes. The cherry-picking process has already begun, and the basic teaching is being left to only a few. To give you a little insight as to what we've been working on with the ad hoc committee, I'm not going to go into any great detail on it because we'll be working on that this afternoon. I want to invite you all to that meeting, and we will probably try to clear up a lot of this. Just to put it in short terms, what we're looking at is a three-step process. Step one being pretty much the basic list. And we're advocating standard application to that. And from all indications from talking with callers all over the country, it's unanimous. We feel we can teach that list in 10 to 12 classes. Standard application. I've done it for 20 years. You know, we had 75 calls when I started calling 26 years ago. We had the basic 50, and we had the extended 25. And we taught in 15 to 20 classes, and we had no problem. I hear a lot of callers tell me that, hey, you can't teach that many calls. Well, how did we do it in 1972? Have our teachers gotten worse? I don't know. I think it's because to be a Saturday Night Festival caller today, all you have to do is get up there and call Relay the Doocy Track 2, spin, chain, and exchange the gears, and you're a star. We're losing the basic choreo that we need drastically. And this is one way that we're hoping to put it back. Step two will probably be an amalgamation of mainstream and plus. I don't see any other way around it. If we don't do that, then we alienate, disorient, disenfranchise the existing dancers, and we don't want to do that. We have to embrace them. Step two must take them in and embrace them so we don't lose them. Step three, to clean up this activity once for all, so we don't have wishy-washy advanced like we do now, milk toast advanced, all these words that I hear, soft advanced. Is that an oxymoron or what? What is that level? The third step of the plan, we're going to discuss this in our meeting. There's a lot of bugs in it, but we're going to try to work them out. And maybe we can get somewhere. But step three must be extended applications to levels 1 and 2. This should help bring the gap closer to help clubs exist, survive. It should help callers that now they're not going to have to teach 100 calls in 20 weeks or 25 classes, whatever the club gives them. That's about as far as I want to go with that. I will have pamphlets, and I want you to invite you to come over. What I've done is I've taken pretty much the mainstream list, really, and then I just tossed a few calls in it to put it up to about 71 or 72 calls. And this list that you're going to see when you come to this session this afternoon, I don't want you to take my intent out of context. I'm not advocating the calls that are on this list when you see it this afternoon. My only intent with this list is to show you how much choreography is being left out of our programs today. The first list that you'll read this afternoon will be 71 or 72 calls, I can't remember. Look right here, 71 calls by family. You take those 71 calls and you take them and you put them by individual calls, it turns into 115. When you go from families to individual calls. Then I sat down and all I could think of, and I'm sure I'm just scratching the surface, but I sat down and came up with extended applications to those 71 calls. 360 different calls. And that's just all I could think of. How did the applications committee get a hold of this? I'm sure they'll probably triple that amount. But anyway, it's for the sole purpose to show all of us how much choreography is being left out of our programs today. And that's all. I'm not advocating that as a list. Thank you very much.
Okay, so essentially what we have here is we have two primary solutions that somebody is doing one or the other or a minor modification. The programs that we have, the solutions that we here offered, number one would be to modify our existing dance program. We need to change it somehow from the standard, basic, mainstream, plus, A1, A2 format. The current fad is to take some of the mainstream calls, some of the plus calls, probably based on some kind of frequency count, which I don't understand that, the logic in that yet, but based on some type of frequency count, take the quote popular calls, put them in one list that we think we could teach in 20 weeks. That's one solution. The other solution that we see is for callers to take the bull by the horns and say, well, okay, I'm going to offer a basic class, and we'll try to get people into the activity sooner so that I'm not taking 30 weeks to teach mainstream and then another 10 weeks to reteach mainstream and another 10 weeks to teach plus. There's pros and cons for all of that. There's everybody can stand up and say a ton of good things about them, a ton of bad things. Jerry gave some great examples why some of them aren't going to work unless you got 9 days in a week. It's theoretically impossible. One of the problems that we're running into is that we're having, quote, plus clubs offer, quote, mainstream lessons. That don't make sense to me. It would seem to me that mainstream clubs would offer mainstream lessons. Plus clubs would offer plus lessons. Unless you're doing a combination. And there are quite a few of us here that probably take dancers all the way through this quasi-plus in a 20 to 30 week time frame. What we would like from you guys now is some type of discussion as to, do you like it? Which one do you like? Do you like neither? Is the answer somewhere a combination of the two? Because right now, guys, the way our system is structured ain't working. It would be great if it was working. In some areas, it is. But in the good old U.S. of A., by and large, it is not working in a large portion of the country. The problems, I see the problems being worse on the West Coast than I do on the East Coast. Primarily, in my area of the country, in the Southeast, the primary level is mainstream. We're not experiencing the problems in the magnitude that the West Coast is, but it's going to get there because the way things happen is they usually start on the West Coast and it filters east. And so if you look at the West Coast now and see the problems here, and I heard a dance leader tell me Saturday night that in Southern California, maybe it was the Los Angeles area, that in the last 2 years, 120 clubs had folded. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but one of the officers of a club was telling me that. There ain't 120 clubs in South Carolina to fold. But I would imagine that percentage-wise, we're probably a little less than that right now, but we're going to catch up with it. If it hasn't caught up with you yet, it's going to catch up with you. Because all it takes, if you're doing everything by the book in your hometown, and I'm 20 miles away, and I'm doing things my way, eventually we're going to run into problems. We're going to all have to come to some agreement as to what we need to do. With that in mind, we will be happy to entertain questions, comments. If there's a question, we'll try to answer it. If we can't answer it, there's probably somebody in here that can. If you have a question or a comment, please use the microphone. And you'll have to come, okay, yeah, there we go. We'll take the microphone up to you. If there's a question you'd like to address to either Jerry or I, Jerry or me, Jerry or me or Jerry, if you want to get to us, it doesn't matter. Be sure it's on. You got to flip up the on switch at the top.
I'm Al Nobby, and I'm a newer caller. I've been dancing plus for quite some time, and I feel I'm trying to take advanced, and I decided that I wouldn't take advanced until I was really sure I knew plus, and I didn't do plus until I was really sure I was going to take mainstream. However, I find a lot of clubs that as soon as they graduate mainstream, they allow them to go on to plus without any dancing at mainstream, but you graduated mainstream. So then you graduate plus. So then they go to advanced. Nobody lets them dance advanced or plus. So they keep going. There is no prerequisite set for allowing people into every level. So therefore you get the weaker dance. It's just like grade school. if you teach them the basics, then they'll be able to dance as they go on. But if you just push them along, I don't care what your program is, it's going to fail.
Good statement. I agree with that. What we're creating, one of the things that we don't do, and it was when the programs were first formed, there was a little note that we at the bottom of the program was that we never read, and it said, essentially, before moving on to the next level, expose your dancers to the calls on this list from different formations. Now that's what we haven't done, and there's some of this I blame on the dancers. I blame the dancers in some point for pushing the callers to graduate people before they're ready. To a point, I think it's our fault because we as callers have not taken the time to learn our craft to where we can call a good basic level dance. I would be one to raise my hand. I would have difficulty right now calling a good basic level dance because I don't. The only time I ever see basic called is when I go to Europe and I call and I have to study. We don't try to take people up and teach them after we teach them how to do the calls. Then we don't take the time to teach them how to dance.
Just one comment on like you said, taking the dancers so quickly to each level, and something that I think all of us need to realize, and maybe we do and we're just ignoring it, but when we do that, when we take dancers to plus so quickly, we lose our network marketing capabilities. And don't forget that that's what made us strong. Network marketing made square dancing strong, not TV ads. Network marketing, friends telling friends that this is a great activity. And once they go to plus, they've dedicated so much of their life in. They've been in this learning mode forever, and they finally get there. We don't have graduates anymore. We have survivors. See what I'm saying? And the last thing they want to do is go back and do that again. And they really don't even want to go out and ask anybody because it's been torturous for them. So we have to think along the lines of reduction. No matter if we change the programs, no matter whether the programs stay the same, that's all up for debate. But there's one common area here, and it's reduction of calls.
We got some questions back here. If you want to come up here and use this one, we'll work at the same time.
You hit the nail on the head when you talk about network marketing. We need to use our newer dancers to recruit new dancers, and that's one of the advantages that we're talking about in this multi-cycle program where you're starting multiple classes a year, is by the time you're asking your brand new dancers to get out and recruit, they're only about halfway through. They've only been through, in our program, they've only been through the basic program. Well, these people are so excited about where they're dancing right now and the point of their dancing. They've only been dancing with us, they've been dancing 6 weeks, and some of the 10 plus 10 programs have been only dancing 10 weeks. They're excited. They go out, they get their friends, they come to this class, and they dance with their friends immediately. Right then, they're going back, they get the chance to review what they've just learned and reinforce their skills with those new calls, but at the same time, they are dancing with the friends that they brought into square dancing right now. And that's the key of networking, getting people to bring people in. Most of our dancers that have been through plus and club dancers, everybody they know square dances, and who can they go out and find? But your newer dancers are your key right there.
Good morning, Kenny Ferris from Laurel, Maryland. Some of you have been around a number of years may remember back in 1984, somewhere about, we had a CALLERLAB convention. Jack Lasry got up. We had a convention, a section entitled 25-Week Learn to Square Dance. And the place was packed, and there's more people at that session than there are at this CALLERLAB convention. And he said, how many people think we ought to have one program of square dancing? Everybody's on their feet, a standing ovation. Well, we had a little committee put together a 25-week Learn to Square Dance program. 2 years later, it got shot down. People don't put the money where the mouth is. I'm glad to hear we're still talking about this, but we have been talking about this for many, many years. And I decided, and a lot of you guys know me because I always get up at the Mainstream Plus meetings, and I come to every one of these conventions trying to drop calls. And guess what? We had some success for a while. We dropped a bunch of calls, actually. Some of you people that are new to square dancing over the last 5 or 10 years, I think maybe part of our problem is that some of the newer callers think that these lists are Bibles, and you can't touch, don't touch that list, But these things do change. They have changed over time. We dropped a lot of calls from the mainstream program.
What do you mean why? We went 4 years to get curlicue out, 4 years in a row to get one call. 80 people stood up and wanted to call her back.
I agree. And I want calls dropped. I'm with you. Okay. But I'm saying, we did make some progress and cleaned up the mainstream program as far as no one was using anyway, or some of the things that weren't the best calls. The Plus program, we dropped some calls. And then suddenly, the last few years ago, we added AC cut the diamond. That was like, I said, oh my God, we've been trying to drop stuff. And guess what? I don't mean to embarrass anybody, but there was 3 callers from California that, hey, let's put some more calls on the list. We don't more calls on the list. But anyway, I'm glad to hear that this is happening again. But please, go to the mainstream and or the Plus program committee sessions and vote to drop some calls. That's where you got to start. If you don't start dropping calls, then it's not going to happen. And one last thing, I'll get off the microphone. Part of the problem of change, we were changing. We were gradually moving in the right direction. And then we stopped being able to vote on Wednesday mornings. That was a big mistake. Because people that are home and not here at the convention don't hear the discussion. They don't hear the passion behind the reasons for the propositions that are brought up. And I really think that we ought to bring up a proposition this year that from this point forward, we can take that on Wednesday morning and then mean something, and then in the future we get something done. And also, more people will come to CALLERLAB because they think it means something.
Come up here and use this. Okay, Ron?
The statement made by the previous speaker that nobody puts their money where their mouth is. In the vendors hall, you will find a display by my. This display, plus the printing, plus the time, plus the stamps, has cost me over $1,000 so far, and that's just to the West Coast callers. I have not done the nation yet on the CALLERLAB list. The program I have espoused comes in 6 parts. Basic 40, girl on boys right. Don't ever change it. For those people who want to extend their passion, same 40 patterns DVD. And you're right, we don't use our brains to use the material that we have. So it's up to the callers. Please read that and fill out the questionnaire. Give it back to me, because eventually that is going to go back to Jerry. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I wanted to tell a non-square dancing story, if I may. I work for a major electronics firm in the Silicon Valley, one of the Fortune 500, and for a division of that firm that used to be one of the large growing divisions. And back about 10 years ago, which may have a time frame that you relate to, things happened, and the division dropped from over 2,000 people down to a few hundred people. I was one of the survivors, obviously. Since then, things have turned around again, which is the good news, and have gone back up, and we're trying to find people at this point just to hire them. We're turning down orders. I've had a number of talks with our general manager and compared what happens at that division with what's going on in square dancing in general, because I see a lot of analogies. I think he gets tired of hearing me talk about square dancing, but there are a lot of analogies. I was on a committee there that was called a transition team, doing somewhat the same things I think Tony and Jerry are maybe trying to do here. But one of the stories that our manager talked about till we were tired of hearing the word, and I'm still not sure if it's pronounced paradigm or paradigm, but we got to change our paradigm. Okay. He pronounced it both ways many different times. But he liked to tell the story of the group out on the oil platform in the North Sea. And the storm came up, and the platform began shaking. And the engineer did a few quick studies and discovered that it was going to sink down into the sea very quickly and very disastrously if they didn't get off on the lifeboats. And no one wanted to get in that lifeboat. They said, we've used this platform for many years successfully, and it's worked, and we want to stay here. And he said, but it's going to sink. And they said, if we used it the way it was intended, it would work. And he said, but it wasn't intended for these seas. It wasn't intended for high seas. It wasn't intended for a case where both people in a couple are working necessarily, where people are very busy. I'm digressing. But he said it was just not going to work. Finally, he took a hammer, a blowtorch, hit the main pipe on the oil rig, and as the gas came out, he lit the pipe. The flames went up. The platform was going to be engulfed in flames, obviously, in a few moments, and everybody dived into the lifeboats and were saved. And they said, "Why'd you do that?" And he said, "I changed your paradigm." That's what I think we need to do. Last year, Jerry Drunk gave a closing speech, I guess it was, at the closing banquet that I thought was wonderful, and I've quoted it to my club in our newsletter, where he said there are two types of square dancers. There are the recreational square dancers and the hobbyist dancers. And I think he was right on, and I've had very good response from people in my club. The hobbyists are the ones that want to take it seriously. They want to learn a lot. They want to understand the exact definition of every move. They want to be there every week. The recreational dancers can't be there every week. Maybe they'd like to. They don't want to take it seriously. They just want to get out and, I say have fun, but the hobbyist ones want to have fun too. It's a different kind of fun. But the key is it's not how long you've been dancing. I have people in my club that have danced for years that sometimes come up to me and say, "You know, I think I'm really a recreational dancer." And I agree with them. I think they are usually. I have people in my new January class that just started a few months ago, that I can tell right now are going to be hobbyist dancers from the question. I'm sure all of you have this same situation. And the problem is they don't know when they start out dancing what they're going to be. I didn't know. I was trying to find a week in my busy schedule to go to class. I don't know. We have to come up with some sort of program that accommodates both of these where they can start off not knowing, and the recreational can go one way and the hobbyists go the other way.
Well, Pacific Grove, California. Keith, this is great because I'd love to follow your comment because I was going to tie into that. I have two clubs which are recreational programs. And on the subject of changing paradigms, I think one of the things we ought to be thinking about when we talk about this stuff is we should not get overly hung up on lists. I don't think lists means anything, personally. I follow a list, that is true. But I think we first have to ask ourselves, what kind of square dance activity do we want to have aside from whatever list it is? Is it recreational? Is it a hobby type activity? If you know you want to have a recreational activity for a particular group, then you build around that. Some of us don't have the nights or the places where we can have classes on separate nights from clubs. So you got to look at the people you have and say, okay, these people are clearly recreational dancers. They are a group that can become well-knit socially. I'm going to teach them what they can dance and absorb with the extended applications or whatever within the time they have. And I'm not sure it necessarily comes down to a complex set of lists. I think almost any list will work if you know how to make a recreational program. I'm trying to figure out how to make a recreational program better, but that's another story. Thank you.
Bill? Bill Wright, San Antonio, Texas. Tony and Jerry, one of you discussed adjusting the list, lengthening one, shortening one. I would vote for shortening the mainstream list a tad, lengthening the plus list a tad, and then continue to do what? We need to make the plus list bigger, the mainstream list shorter, get them more in the same size. If we want to use those two programs and continue using those two programs and have some separation between the two, because as we've all stated, it's too big to jump into the plus program, and the main thing we need to do, whatever list we use, is use the list. Thank you.
You know, we have to have a two-step process to club dancing, not a three. Right now, we're taking them to basic, mainstream, to plus, and that's club level dancing in most parts of the country today. So I don't know how I don't know how increasing the size of one of those programs would help. I can't see that. That's my personal opinion.
I just have a question and maybe a follow-up. How many people in this room think that the list, first of all, let me define what I mean by list, to get from a brand new beginner through basics, mainstream, and plus so that they could dance like convention level or festival level, how many think that the lists are too long? the lists are too big, right? You think they're much too long. Seems to me there's consensus, and I don't know who that was up here earlier, but I want to have lunch with him, whoever that was. I'm buying. And I'm a brand new CALLERLAB member. I joined this morning, and I used to belong 15 years ago, and I went to like 17 of them in a row or something, and then I quit. And what made me quit was that every year, almost everybody thought the lists were too long. And every year there was a buzz, and I wasn't exaggerating. 4 years in a row, the buzz was, we're going to drop curlicue. And what we did is we met at lunch, and we said, let's drop curlicue. We have touch a quarter. It's sort of choreographically somewhat the same, although not time the same, et cetera, et cetera. 800 callers at that CALLERLAB said, we're dropping curlicue. And we got to the Wednesday vote, and 15 people stood behind those mics and said, drop curlicue, here's why. And one guy got up at the end and said, number one, what am I going to do with the singing call ABC, which has curlicue corner in it? And number two, Bill Johnson from Sherbrooke, Alabama, curlicue. It's pretty damn crappy to him to be eliminated. And I am telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that 471 people of whom had said they would drop curlicue, voted now to retain it, and we didn't drop a damn thing. Nor the year after, nor the year after, nor the year after. If the lists are too long, I'm telling you, I still call, 20 dances a month. And if someone makes a motion to drop right and left through, do you all use that call? I use that quite a bit. I promise you I will vote to drop. I'll find some way to talk about that call. The answer is, these guys have the answers. Jerry's absolutely dead right. Tony's dead right. This is the national picture. You need one fleet. You need to cut it down. At Leisure World, where I call in California, we start 2 beginners classes a year, one in January, one in and at least, give me a list I can call from beginner to go out and dance with a club someplace, or go dance when Jerry and Tony are in town, in at least a 6-month period. At least give me that, so I can start twice a year. And I'll tell you, if you start twice a year, I think Mike's right about this starting every 10. If you can do that, some of us can't do it. It's hard, big fella. If you're in some free school or something, maybe you can. Or like in my case in Leisure World, where we're all always elbowing to try to get hall space, you can't do that. At least if you start every 6 months, the ones that drop out fall back and pick up the next one. 6 months is not a long, long time. The other thing, I bet every one of you are deceivers. Because if your brand new beginner comes to you and says, I think square dancing might be fun, I'd like to start, tell me something. How long? How long? You don't tell them. You don't tell them. You don't tell them. Or if you tell them, a year. That's what it is, a year. From beginning to end. You know what? They won't come. You know that and I know that. So you lie, or I don't know what you do. At least I'd like to tell them 6 months. At least give me that. But I'm telling you, the devil, this ain't the decision. He's right. He's been right. You know that. I know that. 80% of you know that, except a few people that are a little bit successful with the program you have. The devil is in the details. The gentleman that spoke about paradigms is exactly right. We teach that in business management. You got to yank you out of your current paradigm and say, if we're ever going to fix it, you have to decide that you have to do something drastic. And I, to be honest with you, I don't care. Believe me, I do not care what the list is. Do anything you want. All I want is the list needs to be smaller. And Ron said, okay, I've spent all this energy thinking of a list. Hell, we won't agree with that. I wasn't sure. You don't agree on the list. You need to vote that the plus list, the whole thing is now 71 calls. Pick them. You pick them. Just say there's only got to be 71, and then have something at least for a 2 or 3 year trial where you want to add a call. Fine. Tell me which one it takes the place of. You add one, you drop one.
I sit back and wonder sometimes, are we talking about change for our benefit or for the dancer's benefit? I watch a lot of callers abuse the programs. I watch callers tell me that the dancers won't doocy and the dancers won't load the bow, and we feel like we ought to teach those things in lessons. And guys, I can tell you that to a man out here, it's us that wants those calls. And the problem with winning those calls is those are the calls that take the most amount of time. So if we're talking about creating an easier, quicker entry level, I think that you guys are going to have to put it in your head that you're going to have to give up those plus calls that that we want. The dancers don't want them. Dancers don't know what's on the program. You go to association presidents and ask them, where is Diamond Circulator? Well, I don't know, mainstream, advanced. Well, they don't know. And so it's us that needs those tools. What we have to work on, guys, is we need some more caller education. Caller needs perhaps to get more involved in caller education. We all individually need to go out and further our education so that we can learn to use the tools that we have. Because our basic problem is we're not using the tools that we have. If we used our intellect and we did things the way to avoid a paradigm, if we did things the way that perhaps we should, we wouldn't have this problem now. There is a severe problem. When I do a festival and there is as many people dancing A2 as dancing plus, and I go to the mainstream hall and there's 100 squares of plus, 100 squares of A2, and 4 squares of mainstream. I just did a dance in Denver last month. 85 squares, Sunday night, mainstream. And nothing wild, just the same old stuff. People came and had a good time. I think we need to get back to that, perhaps that manner of thinking, guys. I just want my 2 points.
From the Washington area, Washington State. I guess I fall on the other side of the coin somewhat because I represent a lot of dancers that are mainstream dancers, and you constantly talk about we need to cut down Washington and water it down to where we only have X number of movements. The whole state is going to move to plus, and we haven't accomplished anything at that point. And not only Washington, but you're talking Oregon. You just said South Carolina is a mainstream state. Teach people to read college-level books. You're not going to have them pick up primers and first-grade books to read. They're going to go on to the next level that they've got, and you haven't accomplished anything. The real truth, the whole thing, is we as callers need to have some restraint in what we're doing. We need to sit down and say, the mainstream program is great. And another response on telling people how long they're going to go through a set of lessons, I tell them they're going to be it the rest of your life. If you enjoy the activity, you're going to learn the rest of your life. You're going to drop out of the activity when you move on to something else. They don't need to know it's going to take 10 weeks or 15 weeks or 30 weeks or 100 weeks. They're going to learn the whole time they're in the activity. As long as they're enjoying it, they're going to continue on.
Would you be opposed to dropping I just had Jerry. Why don't you ask it, Jerry? Just ask him on the mic.
Jerry's
Would
next.
you be opposed to dropping 10 mainstream calls, adding 10 plus calls, and calling it a plus?
Jerry's next. Let's start with 4, not 10. Jerry's next.
3 speakers ago, I knew what I was going to say. I think that going back to what I was thinking about when Jerry was talking, he made comment about that we are bringing the dancers through the lessons and then we entertain them. What are we doing when we're teaching them? What are we doing? We take 3 nights and we bring those people into the activity, and boy, we treat them, we kiss, we want them to stay. And there were 3 nights. Now they're signed up. And now, in our wisdom, we have so many hours to get through so many moves, and we hammer them every week. What happened to entertaining them every time they walked in the door and letting them go out of the hall having fun and wanting to come back next week? Whether we learned any moves that night, as long as we had a good time while we were there. We entertained those people. And our problem is gone about the lists. Now, that's not the whole problem. I agree. Now, to speak on to the lists, we do have a problem with the list, but that's not our whole problem. As soon as we take the guts, if we get all of us get the guts to take it and say, hey, we've got to have so many moves, pick the moves, we all have to do it. Then we've got to go out there and we've got to help the callers learn how to use the tools that we have now established as being our activity. And we've got to then entertain the dancers. Once we entertain the dancers, we've got dancers and we have no problems because they want to come back. And they're going to have this networking that we need. Now, to go off of this, we need to get, if we get down to one list, And I'm not sure that's the right way, but I'll tell you what, I want to take a step forward somewhere. Take a step. Let's not just stand here. Traveling across the country, Plus is a lost list. It is a lost list, whether you call it soft or whatever. The dancers know patterns at that point. They're the best of the people that we took to mainstream. They survived it. And the people that get into Plus that are really the good dancers, whatever that word is, gung-ho, thank you. The dancers that really want to go on to advanced. And we can't call Plus moves at advanced. We can barely call mainstream, and yet that is 80% of our best calls that we can entertain the people with at Plus are in mainstream. When we go to advanced, we can entertain them with some mainstream because there's a lot more A2 calls and A1 calls. We use those. We do not use Plus because we can't have an A1 or A2 dancer do a relay the deucey from any different position than a Plus dancer can. That's the only position we can do it, so we've lost that level. We've got a level of people just in there dancing the moves from one setup, and that's it. So we need to get one list, and then those people that want to move on, that's the ones we educate with the extended, and we move on to the next levels.
Hi, I'm Mary Holton, and I'm a new dancer. I've only been dancing about 2 years. This is fascinating for me to listen to, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to give you a new dancer's perspective. A lot of you have been calling for a long time. When I signed up for square dance lessons, I didn't care if it was 50 calls, 100 calls, 3,000 calls. Somebody told me that I could have fun square dancing. So I said, okay. Now, it just so happens that the club that we went to learn, where I went to learn with my partner who had been square dancing for many, many years, was the mainstream club. And was a Plus club. So we learned how to dance at the mainstream level. And I was told that square dancing was fun. And I watched, and people were having a great time. And they'd do some tips for the Plus dancers, and the beginners would sit out and watch. And I said, that looks fascinating. Look how much fun they're having. I'm going to do this. So I went through the beginner class, and I graduated. And we went off to their first festival, and I had a blast. I thought it was really great. Danced in the mainstream hall. And I looked over, and I saw all the people that I danced with in my club who were Plus dancers. And I thought, well, gee, I want to go dance with them, but I got to learn how to do that so that I can dance with the people that I see every week. So I came back and I learned Plus. But you know the thing that I lost out of all this? I didn't have fun. I didn't have fun as a mainstream dancer. I never got a chance to just go out and dance mainstream. It was kind of like, okay, now we got you through that one. We'll get you to the next one so that you can enjoy having a good time with us. And I've been dancing for 2 years. And I can honestly tell you, I have a good time dancing. I have fun. But I've never really had the chance to just slow down now and just enjoy the activity. Because I've got people in my club who are dancing A1, and if I want to learn to dance with them, I got to go over and do that. And it's the whole bit about having fun square dancing is we don't give beginners a chance to really enjoy the activity. We need to really bring them together. I could care less. People say, well, we want you to come to our class to learn because we want you as a new member. Well, that's great. But we end up with maybe 10. We're lucky if we get maybe 10 new dancers. That's a very good turnout. Rather than have the whole area say, look collectively and just totally step out of that old paradigm and say, we want new dancers. What can we do to attract them? Why couldn't all the clubs in the area have one beginner class and let one caller call that for whatever the week it is? Now, I'm stepping out of it because I know you guys all have your idea of what you want to do, and nobody wants to give it up because they all feel that I can teach, new dancers better, or if I don't get those new dancers, they won't join my club. See, we're so worried about everybody joining our club and getting this little ticky for having them in the activity that we forget that we need to bring them all together. I would not have minded driving a little further to learn how to square dance if I had known that maybe I would be dancing with 50 people. Rather than just take all these people from all these little clubs you're trying to teach and retain them, where I could say, hey, we're all learning together. This is really a fun activity. And then we could all go out and learn mainstream together. We could all go to a festival together. And then, we're so hung up on this club concept and who's the best caller to teach. It's not a matter of that. It's a matter of how can we attract the dancers? How can we retain the dancers? How can we get them all to come back week after week? And what do we do to, get those dancers to come into the fold and really feel like they're going to have a good time dancing. And that's the thing that I think we need to really work on. But I'll tell you, from a new dancer's perspective, we really could care less if it's, when you sign up, you do want to know what you're signing up for, but it's kind of like golf. How many guys took golf up and thought they were going to learn it in 3 lessons in golf? It takes forever.
This comment at anybody, we need to keep our comments as brief as possible. We got a lot of guys that want to talk, so if we can get our point across and get her out of there. How's that, Robert?
Not bad. Hello, how you are? I'm Paul from Honolulu. Didn't see many of you at our convention in January. I know that you were up to your navel in snow. At any rate, I've got one burning question. If we all drive red cars, will this be a red car nation? That's why my dancers plead with me to call. But I'm not a caller. I don't belong here. I don't know why I'm here, except in Honolulu, we have one individual particularly that does most of the teaching and training of our new dancers. He teaches a hybrid. He's tried to explain it to me. You've read his stuff in the American Square Dance magazine, and it sounds very good in print. In fact, the problem we have is his dancers can dance really well at his dances. In Honolulu, or Paradise, as I like to call it, went on vacation 15 years ago, haven't been back since, to the mainland that is. We get a lot of visitors. A lot of callers come to play with us. They really like our sandbox. Unfortunately, every time they come to call, our people cannot dance to their calling. They speak in tongues. My message from Honolulu is I don't give a damn what you do, so let's all do the same thing. If we can't have a program that we can all dance to, then let's go back 50 years. And I also want you to note that although I've been trying for several years to set a fashion statement, you folks are very, very slow learners. Aloha.
Greg, we got a couple behind you here.
Greg from Colorado Springs. We're all familiar with the problems Congress has had in wrestling with things like the budget. And in the square dance calling field, we have for a long time had a conflict with the concept of are we leaders or entertainers? We used to have more leaders in the activity. Today we have far more entertainers. Yes, I do understand that if a club does not agree with your viewpoints as a leader, maybe they'll hire John Doe instead of you, and therefore you can bend to the wishes of the dancer. I'm not sure we can do anything about it. It's a sad state of affairs that we have fewer leaders and more entertainers. Maybe if we have difficulty, like Congress has difficulty in reaching important decisions, maybe we somewhat need to take it out of our hands, and if the decision was made to reduce the list or lists, over the past 10 years, maybe looking at which figures were suggested for dropping, maybe we should put those 20 or 30 or 40 or whatever calls that were suggested for dropping, as long as there's not some basic choreographic reason to not drop them, and maybe it should be totally random. Put the list on a wall, give someone a dart, someone who does not have good aim, and merely wants to throw the dart at the board. If that's what it's going to take, something totally random, I could agree to abide by that kind of decision if that's what it's going to take. Because we can argue this all the time. First, we must convince ourselves that the health of the activity and our position as leaders of an activity, step away from our role as entertainer, but our position as leaders of the activity warrants us doing something serious about this. The one thing about, well, I'll leave those off because someone else will probably come up with some of those points, but that's the main thing that I think we need to do.
Yeah, Gail from up in Seattle there, and I think Tony kind of mentioned something about it. They do basic, right? Right, Tony? And Tony has to work. There it is right there. And you could get, if you had 20 moves, you have so many combinations like you were talking, and you have to work. I think too many of us are too lazy, and we don't want to have to work. You can make, any amount of moves interesting. You could drop, I'd have to go against Dave. Okay, Dave's from Seattle. Did he take off on me? Oh, he's right there. You could take half the mainstream moves as long as you make it interesting. You don't tell the dancers, they don't know any difference. It's like when I'm teaching plus at the plus at my plus club, I don't advertise it as progressive plus dance. I just tell my people to come to the dance, and everybody else comes to the dance and they don't know what's on the list. I just call the moves that I've taught at my lessons the whole dance night, and they don't know that I didn't call the ring ding. They just know that I had a good time. Now, when Tony and Jerry come up and they call a plus dance, they basically call it mainstream dance. And they have a few plus moves to it now and then, but nobody complains. They don't say a word. They have a good time. So you have to do your homework.
From England, so I'm from across the pond, so I've got a slightly different bent on things. I think we're a little way behind you guys from what's happening in the UK, and certainly overseas in Sweden, Europe. They're doing very well, particularly in Sweden, with basic dances. However, I remember Dave Taylor saying at the World Convention several years ago, hey, you guys, you've got to be a little bit careful what's going to go and what's going to happen if you rush through the programs. And in Sweden now, they're dancing up to challenge. So are they as far behind as we think of all the problems? We in England have got one club that has been going now for something like 46 years, which is most of the history of square dancing in the UK. That club, unfortunately, is about to fold. They get 8 dancers if they're lucky on a night. I assume we're like you in this country. We are being competed against with line dancing. Although if you go to a line dance club for 1 hour, it will cost you at least 3 times what it will cost you to go for a whole night's square dancing. However, you can go to a line dance club and you can dance that night. We need this 20-week activity. We need the 20-week program. We need to bring these dancers in and then keep them somehow. One other little thing is we need to keep the dancers entertained. You can do an awful lot with the basic program. It's hard work, but it can be done. If you look at the old section or the little pamphlet and go right to the back page, all the extra little bits and things, you can do an awful lot of fun things with that one page. You don't need to go on to plus 2 to entertain the dancers. As a we need to, and I'm also the PRO of the Callers Association in the UK, and we do some training sessions. And we came with one critical idea was to get a caller to call a tip for us without using any form of ocean waves. I couldn't do it straight there and then, but you can do an awful lot with these basic moves. Yes, let's have the 20-week program. Let's go for it. I'm with you, Jerry.
Clark Baker from Belmont, Massachusetts. I have several points I've written down here. The first is, kind of as a preface, I think we have a very rich and varied and broad activity which can be enjoyed in many, many, many different ways. And many of us have experienced it only in a few ways. For example, we went to modern Western lessons, we learned to dance, we learned to call or something. And we assume that the way it's being done where we grew up, where we learned, or how it's being done where we are is the way it has to be. And you want to broaden your point of view and look at all the ways it's being done. For example, seeing the kids dance today. You could go into your school, you could feel like you wanted to train and educate 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. I started dancing in 3rd grade in a group similar to that, and then stopped for many years and then picked it up again. I think that's a very valuable thing. The second thing I want to say is that no matter what changes we try to make to the list, I think, especially reducing calls, the choreographic complexity has grown much, much faster than the calls we're dropping. Even if we could drop calls at twice the rate, we still have this choreographic complexity pushed to us, partly maybe introduced by the advent of sight calling, and partly just because we all like our own puzzle solving. And I think we have to reduce that, not necessarily the calls. We need a coherent proposal for change, like we've heard here, not simply a piecemeal, let's drop this or let's drop that. If we don't have a coherent proposal, then when the other members vote on something, they don't see the rationale behind what we're doing. We shouldn't be dealing in numbers of families, numbers of calls, but in the teach time, review time, and the time to dancer mastery of those calls. So the fact that we dropped Partner Hinge didn't help us one bit, because it never took us very long to teach it, we never used it, we never reviewed it, so we didn't gain anything, except we have what appears to be on paper a shorter list. We need to accomplish evolutionary change as opposed to revolutionary change. Presumably that lighting the oil well on fire was revolutionary change. I don't believe we can afford to lose or upset or antagonize our existing base of dancers. Even though they're growing older, and even though there's less and less of them all the time, I think we still need them, otherwise we're all out of business. And I'm not willing to make my bet on one revolutionary change that this is it or we lose square dancing. As I say, it's a big, broad activity. I think the pieces will survive, but maybe the big conventions and stuff won't. Many callers don't have the training or interest to call and teach what many of us believe is the solution. We've heard this over and over today with if you didn't have ocean waves or if you were asked to call a basic program, could you do it? And I think that's a problem. I'm not sure that just training people is a solution. Looking at the CDP program, the interest that's been in it, the people who subscribe to it, the people who do it, that's one piece of activity, but requires a different type of training, a different mindset, and a different set of goals among the callers. Most of us, I think, in Caller Lab have come up and do Modern Western, Mainstream Plus, and teach lessons and all that. I would much prefer to legislate complexity instead of what calls are on the list. I'm not sure we can do that, but I think that's a better approach. And finally, there's nothing that's stopping any of us from going out and starting a basic or a mainstream club or set of lessons in your area and teaching it for as long as you want to take and graduating those people into your class or your club and doing it again and again. It's think locally, act globally, or it's the other way around, right? Think globally, that's what we do here, act locally. You have a small area. You can attract only so many dancers to your nights of the week and do your things. You're in control of that. Maybe you aren't great at recruiting and it takes more people, but if you think you need mainstream in your area and it's a city and it doesn't have it, you can go off and do something about it. Thank you.
From Portland, Oregon. Trying to remember everything that I had with some of the things I said here. About 3 years ago, I wouldn't have been for change. My oil platform as well got on fire and taken down. We lost a place, a free school we were having classes in. We no longer could do that. I had a plus club as well as mainstream. In Oregon, yes, mainstream is the predominant dance level. However, the plus dancers were not bringing new people in, and we shut that down. What happened when the field went down and we could not get into any schools, I was fortunate that in my club I have a minister. I do some minister stuff fake myself, and he's a real one, but he is an ordained priest, a pastor, and he says, use our church. We got into there. This January we marketed our dance activity as a family, non-alcoholic, non-drug fun. Out of that, we got 3 squares of family, my age and younger. Folks, we have to make the change. I might not, if we hadn't had that class in 6 months, I might not be calling because even our regular dances had gone down to about 3 squares. Another change we made as younger people come in, the older ones wanted to quit dancing earlier. The young ones said, we don't want to come to your club because you quit so early. We lengthened our dance by an hour. Our attendance has doubled. So, some of us have been around a long time. We need to listen to some of these changes and go with it. Another thing, basic dances. A lot of you probably know Jim Hattrick from Vancouver. He and I talked for years about doing a basic dance, and one night he says, I got a hall, let's quit talking, let's walk the walk. We've done this for 2 years now, October through May, one Friday a month, we're dancing 5 to 7 squares basics. It's for me, and I enjoy it now to go do some homework on this choreography. There's all kinds of things you can do with those 50 basics. And we've got some plus dancers even coming out because they know we're going to do different things, as well as harmony and that kind of stuff, and hexes and all sorts of things to do. But you need to get out and work and listen to these people. We need to make change. I'm sure that my program has turned around, that I'm going to survive, but I want all of you so we can have fun of it. What these guys are doing, it's true, their weekends are mostly mainstream. And there's plus and advanced dancers that we're not complaining. We're out for the next year before it's sold out. We get on this wagon and
Jim. skirted around the edges of a problem, but we haven't really stated it as I see it. We've met the enemy, and it's us. It's not the dancer. It's the callers that are a problem. When I first started calling 20 years ago, we were leaders. We were not paid entertainers who do what the dancers wanted us to at any whim of clubs we go to. We were leaders of an activity that was intensely fun for everybody that was doing it. We've got away from that. The problem is not a list. The lists are actually in pretty doggone good shape. If you take a look at the basic list, they're very logically set up. So you progress from one call to the next call, all the prerequisites are in where they need to be, you start disturbing that and we may have more of a problem. The problem is how we apply the lists rather than the list itself. I had a veteran caller who was very, very successful at the time who is not successful at all now. Explain one thing to me that I've tried to use. And that's a basic rule of thumb that says the rule of 10. You call basic, you teach basic. The basic dancers learn basic and dance basic until they are ready to go forward. If you go into mainstream, you call basic 10 times as hard. When they dance mainstream, they dance tough basic, but vanilla mainstream. If they go into plus, they dance mainstream twice as hard, 10 times as hard, excuse me. Rule of 10. Each time you go up, you extend the complexity of your program, and it self-regulates. However, if the caller next to me says, I want to be popular, more dancers, I'm not going to do that, we've just shot ourselves in the foot. We're no longer leaders. We're entertainers, and we are at the whims of anything anybody tells us what to do.
I'd like to follow on that same thought and go back. Say again?
Who are you?
I'm Jim Mayo. I'm from New Hampshire. We still have snow. But particularly to go back to what Ron Cooley mentioned, the recreational dancer. I'm very much afraid that we, square dancing, modern square dancing, no longer regard the recreational dancer as our customer. But the way we are operating our activity changed when we learned to improvise choreography. When we did that, we changed the basic degree of difficulty of square dancing immensely. And now our only survivors are those who are able to keep up with constantly changing 1-second warning response time. I'm very afraid that we are looking at list changes as a way of covering up a mistake that has nothing to do with the lists. It is the way we present square dancing to people. We don't want in our activity people who find our challenges too difficult. And the base of people from whom we draw the rest of square dancing has disappeared because we don't offer a program that they can handle. I'm very afraid that we will make changes in the list and fail to notice our real problem.
She's got her hand up for a while.
My name is B.J. Harrell, and I'm from Rochester, Minnesota, home of the Mayo Clinic and home of the stuffiest people in town. Our problem is not the list. Our problem is how do we change the image of square dancing to the people. Stuffy bees and then stuffy bees into classes. Because it is not even their circles. When we do demonstrations and summer activity where the demonstration took place, and they had us dancing among all the smoke of the vendors. I called the city council and I blew my stack, and I told them, square dancing is an American heritage. Square dance callers are professional entertainers. Give them the respect that they deserve. This year we have a platform of our own for this celebration. The demands of life are concerning our baby boomers. How can we show them that despite the need to raise a family, they need to give themselves one night a week of fun? That's what we have to do. We have to attract people into this activity by changing our image, because so far we have given birth to a superior race of square dance callers that dance, 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 move up, move up, move up, have no time to meet new people, to bring them into the activity. Change our image, work with the people that you can attract, and make it welcome to them and make it fit into their lives. Thank you.
What will be our last speaker, Charlie? Come on. Then we're going to wrap things up, okay?
Yeah, I'm very nervous in front of crowds when I'm talking. When I'm sitting or calling, I'm all right. I'm Charlie Brown from California. I got a couple of things. When I very first started calling, or started dancing, the caller that taught me says there's really only 3 basic moves to square dancing. And I says, what? He says, there's only 3 basic moves to square dancing. It's an arm turn, a line, and a promenade. We created all these other calls by making definitions of those 3 basic movements. Okay? So when you take a look at the lists, and if you're going to put them down there where they should be, make sure you take a look at those 3 basic movements, and you include the definitions that we put to these calls, so that we can use those 3 basic movements together and that they flow. We all have our pet calls. I know that. I love diamonds. I use them to death. But we got to use some things where the dancers have fun, and you use the basics that fit together. I don't care if it's called 15 million times during the night. If it don't fit with the rest of them, throw it away.
Thanks, Charlie. Have at it. All right, we're gonna go ahead and tie up so we can tie this thing up together so that we can all get to lunch. It appears that since I have yet to hear anybody speak in favor of what we have now, I'm very surprised. And the reason I'm surprised, being on the board and the executive committee, I'm perhaps privileged to some information that maybe you guys are not. We hear gripes about quarterly selections. We don't need them, get rid of them. We put it out to the membership. 25% of the membership votes. 25% of our membership votes. Resoundingly, they say, no, keep quarterly selections. We sit down in a group like this and we say, well, we need to move the calls. We need to do something. When it comes time to vote, 25% of us resoundingly vote, no, keep it the way it is. It's time that we as a group get off the pot. You need, number one, you need to have the courage of your convictions. I'm a firm believer that we've created our own problems. I think personally that, since it's now time for my personal opinion, I personally think that Plus has killed square dancing. I think if we eliminated it completely, we'd be a lot better off. Every damn call on there, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see that we need them. I think A1 is the next culprit. I think we should eliminate A1. If you're going to stand by your convictions, stand by your convictions. If we want to make an easier entry level to get more people in, let's give them a program that we can teach in the shortest period of time. You can't have a short period teach time if you're teaching coordinates and diamonds and cuts and flips and ping pongs and all of this. Have the courage of your convictions. We've got a great program. I think the program for group
Or I think the structure's wrong. I think we really messed up a long time ago when we added this middle level. That's what that +1, +2 thing is what killed us. Because then it took away my tool as a caller. Now, if I have a floor that's having difficulty, I know I want to smooth the floor out, I can call Relay the Doocy, and everybody does it. If you took that away from me, I'm going to have to go back and do my homework again and figure out another way to do that. And that's hard. I have the courage of my convictions. I say now, I would love to get rid of all those calls. I think they're useless. The callers want them. The dancers don't need them. We callers need them to make our act entertaining. And we need to come to grips with that. That we're relying on those particular calls, and those are the complex calls. We're relying on those complex calls to make our evening entertaining so that we can entertain our dancers for 2 hours, because we are not able to keep them entertained at a lesser level. And until we can sit down and say to yourself, I need to do something to fix that. We have this problem whether you have 5 calls on the entry level, whether you have 20 calls on the entry level, and whether it takes you 5 weeks or 50 weeks to teach. Thank you. Jerry?
I think a lot of callers are really worried about what calls would end up on an amalgamated list. They wonder, is my favorite call going to be there? And like Tony said, I'll see a good way to figure out what calls you want on the square dance list of today. You take a look at the calls. If that call is too hard for its position, then it probably shouldn't be there. Really, the doozy is really tough anywhere but normal. That call shouldn't be on the square dance list. You put a boy girl left hand ocean wave and call spin chain and exchange the gears. These are C1. These are C3 calls that we just happened to randomly 20 years ago put on the plus list. California, the U.S. had +1, so California had to have +2, and these were calls that going around this back then calling, and they just had to. Okay, let's put them on the list. Well, guess what? Really, the doozy, plain vanilla, gets really, really fast. Get this, we teach dancers to chain through, take it away from them when they get the plus. We teach dancers really the doozy, only to take it away from them when we get them to A1. We never call it again. These calls are useless. Go on, let's call. Shouldn't be on the list. Extended application to it, guys and girls. Can't do it. You take a look at our mainstream calls, they're not difficult when you go to all position it. That's the criteria, and that's where I think we should really think about where we want to put extended application. It's very crucial. A lot of people say, well, we should do it right basics. Well, how can we start that make all the answers in the United States hypocrites? If we put it after mainstream, we got all these programs that don't know, because we never taught it to them. So we really have to get this list shrunk down and then go after extended application and learn how to use it, and use that as a program supported by its own committee here at CALLERLAB, so the rest of us can learn how to use it, and maybe that will be a deterrent from people going on into advanced. The other thing I want to say is, also take these hypocritical weights off the shoulders. Every time we walk into a dance, or girls, sorry, I was referred to them as he's. Sorry, Cindy. Every time they go into a dance, they feel hypocritical. They're going against the principles. They're being forced to call a dance with 4 or 5 calls at it, because the dancers don't know it, most of them. They're not calling, you can't call any positioning on the mainstream. They don't know it. Well, we don't have to go against our principles. What we want to do is try to relieve these hypocritical weights, get them off of our shoulders, so we can get on with the more fun things and get back to the particular organization here at CALLERLAB. Spend more time talking to friends instead of talking about this. Thank you very much.